want to talk about the best story in football this season. I think the Niners are up there. Like, no one quite understands why they're underperforming, and it's an interesting story. But I think the best story in football is the Lions. They've been the best team in football pretty much all season. Doesn't mean they'll win the Super Bowl, but to now, they've been the best team pretty much from the beginning of the season to now. And I feel like they're what the Rams could have been. And that's what's so interesting about them. Like, their general manager came from the Rams, Brad Holmes. Their general manager drafted Aaron Donald, Todd Gurley, and Jared Goff. And the Rams thought that McVay was a superstar. And maybe he is. They didn't think Brad Holmes was worth keeping. Like, clearly Brad Holmes and Sean McVay disagreed about Goff. Because it seemed like McVay blamed Goff for everything. Their first Super Bowl loss, whenever things didn't go well, it was Goff's fault. And the guy who drafted him goes to Detroit, and the first thing he does is trade for Goff and also get 2 first-round picks, which become, they trade around and they get Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. So there's a bizarro world where Brad Holmes is the GM of the Rams, and McVay is coaching Goff still and getting along, and they have Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta.
And they're loaded.
And it's like, okay, but they won that one Super Bowl with Stafford. Yeah. But that year, they also had Odell Beckham Jr. and Cooper Kupp, who wasn't in the first Super Bowl that they lost, and Von Miller. And it's possible that Jared Goff could have won the Super Bowl with them that year. I mean, it's like they were dominant. They needed the Niners to choke in the NFC Championship game, and then they played Cincinnati. So you did this all-in move to win one Super Bowl when it wasn't necessarily necessary. We don't know. We'll never know. And now you're like doomed to a future of mediocrity. Like, they're the Lions. They're the team the Lions were with Stafford forever. 5-6, 7-8. Whereas the freaking Lions are the team that the Rams used to be and could have still been. So that's interesting to me. I mean, the Rams are going freaking nowhere. And that's what they wanted. That's what they traded for.
Yeah, and I will say that if you're Brad Holmes, things are a little bit disingenuous. I mean, they started with the whole mantra, fuck them picks. Right. They went hardcore into basically mortgaging their future for a Super Bowl win. And I'm going to be honest with you.
I wonder if that was Holmes or if that was McVay thing. Like, you know what I mean?
That I'm trying to make. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you sit here and you could say, because he's in the driver's seat, that he's the one running the directions. But that type of mantra is something that, number one, I know GMs do not rock with, because that's basically mortgaging their future and their power as a GM. But also, it seems like that's also a track that coaches would love to do, because that's like, dude, give me the best now, immediately. I do not care. We're here to beat the competition that's here in front of us, which really doesn't lend to building teams. You look at Jared Goff and what he's done, what he's been able to do under Ben Johnson versus Sean McVay, and he's a better quarterback under Ben Johnson. You just got to give it up. Offensively, they seem to know exactly how to use him in Detroit versus in the Rams. He was put in a lot of precarious situations where, honestly, if they didn't have a run game, he was done for. Sean McVay, I mean, I know that he gets a lot of bail because he wins, and he won early, and he was smart to win early and push it and put the pedal to the metal. But my biggest thing is that, hey man, guests and fish take 3 days old before they start to turn rotten. And it's like, you've gotten 3 years since this last Super Bowl, dude. You better
20 and 25 since then. 20 and 25 since the Super Bowl. They haven't won a playoff game. Like, that's what Stafford was mired in Detroit forever. And everyone was like, well, it's not Stafford's fault. It's the organization. Like, yeah, sure. But now that, like, that's what the Rams are. And it's like, if you look at the Rams and the Niners, they're similar because McVay and Kyle maybe have more power than any two coaches in the league. They're the dictators of their teams. And their teams are both 5-6 right now. Whereas the Lions, who are the best team in the league, at least right now, have a strong general manager, a head coach that doesn't call plays, and two of the best coordinators in football. I mean, it's a very regimented organization. It's different than these two.
Yeah, and I think that them being able to hold on to all of the cards right now is, in my way, it's a form of obfuscation, right? It's a form of cloaking the truth in plain sight, where, hey, I get to be the OC, the head coach, the
general manager,
the game manager. Yep. You know what I'm saying? The game manager. I get to do all of that. And while you look at me, you don't ever get to know what hat I'm wearing at the moment, but you just know I'm busy, right? But The reason why we pass out and dole out job descriptions and jobs is, number one, so you can keep everybody in their fair place, but then also so you can know how to adequately put the results on whose job it was to get things done. Case in point, we got to start looking at some more Sean McVay stuff, but there may be some talking as a head coach and talking as an offensive coordinator within the same question. We know that Kyle does that a lot. And basically it's based on, how do I need to evade this question so I can give you 10,000 foot view jargon without getting into the weeds. And, I'll tell you this, when the rubber meets the road, Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan are going to have to put together succinct teams in order to move forward, because right now, I don't think that they're the sexy names anymore. Dan Campbell's coming. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the Lions are coming. It's LaFleur's time. I think the Packers are coming.
And with the Rams, like, people were like, okay, well, they're going all in. They know they know it's an older team and they're going to have to reload after they win this Super Bowl. But as long as they draft well, they'll be fine. Yeah, but they don't have Brad Holmes anymore. It's Sean McVay's team. So, they'll hit on some picks. Puka Nacua was good, but ultimately their roster is mid as hell now, dude. Like,
they've always been mid on defense too, dog.
They have no linebackers. They never have linebackers. They're slow on offense. Cooper Kupp is slow. Puka Nacua is slow. Kyron Williams isn't explosive. Like, they're just a methodical, mediocre team. And you know what? The Niners are like that too. Like, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, great.
Inverse, though, right?
But they're not explosive anymore. And for all Malik Mustafa, great pick. Ricky Pearsall, maybe not. I mean, how many first round picks do the Niners just get nothing out of? So I think the Rams are kind of instructive, because they've always been a couple of years ahead of the Niners. And if the Niners aren't careful, they'll be the Rams.
If
they give Kyle too much power?
True. What unit on the Rams is the equivalent of the 49ers offensive line?
They're linebackers.
Yeah. Underutilized. Yes. That most important, but they don't draft them. They don't go get guys for them. They'll get one guy just to say that they have a linebacking core, but everybody else is a jag, just a guy. They don't do enough to actually be a force multiplier at that position at all.
And one more thing, like, if you're going to have a coach for 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, there's got to be more than just scheme. You can't just be a scheme guy, because you won't be cutting edge for 15 years. You might be cutting edge for 5. I think we saw that with Kyle and McVay. Like, they were certainly cutting edge for 5 years. Is either one cutting edge anymore? Not this year. No, absolutely not.
The guard is changing, and they're not.
Yes,
and they're not keeping up. They're not fighting.
No.
To keep up. That's one thing that you respected about the older coaches, like Sean Payton and Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick and Norv Turner and Marty Schottenheimer. Some of those old school coaches where everybody had their MO, like what they love to do. Like, Norv was going to give you that West Coast. We always know what we're going to get out of guys, right? But one thing that I always loved seeing about them is that the wrinkles and the things that they did from year in to year out to move the game forward, to push the game forward. And you don't see that, with Bill Belichick. I remember even Bill Belichick being a defensive guy. It was him who went out to Oregon and sat down and learned the RPO so he could bring that back to the offense, started up with double tight formations, just things that you see in the league that you think, man, like, you guys are really working. I don't see that out of Kyle and Sean anymore.
I think what's interesting is, like, both of these guys may have kind of run out of fresh ideas a few years ago. And McVay's last great idea was, well, I don't know if it was a great idea, but it was get Matt Stafford and ride him as far as you can. And then with Kyle, it was get Christian McCaffrey and just spam him as much as you can. But like, now those things aren't winning you games anymore. It's like, what do you got left?
And for context, sorry, Grant, for context, you know what's crazy? One of the motivators for getting Christian McCaffrey didn't even really start until we realized that the Rams wanted him.
Yep.
And we were trying to keep him away from the Rams.
That's correct. So here's my thing. So if the Niners and the Rams are kind of like sister teams, and we saw what McVay did as he got more and more power and more of an ego, he blamed his failures on the quarterback and eventually traded him for a quarterback who was older and maybe more ready to win. Who knows? Is that possible that Kyle could do the same thing? You know, they missed the playoffs this year, and he goes to management and says, "Look, Brock's good, but we're never going to win a Super Bowl with him. Why don't we trade him right now for Matthew Stafford?" Or
no, my God,
you know what I'm saying?
Man. But yeah,
like I don't know who it is, but like someone who's like 10 years older, 15 years older, who's technically a little bit better right now, and technically might give the Niners a little bit better chance to win the Super Bowl next year. Just like McVay did with Goff. I mean, Stafford is 7 years older than Goff, and they made that trade.
Well, that's what scares me about our organization, because it's not about Kyle, in my opinion. It's not about Sean McVay. It's the owners. It's the Yorks. Do the Yorks know how to go find their guy? Do the Yorks know this organization, and do they know how to go find somebody that they can learn from Kyle, right? The intellectual property that Kyle has given us, it's in the building. It's not going anywhere. If Kyle was to listen, I'm here to tell you this right now. If you think that the DNA of Andy Reid is still not in Philly to this day, and how they run their practices and how they scout and the reason why they care so much about offensive line in Philly is because of Andy Reid. So listen, there's a lot that Kyle has taught us to streamline us, to bring us up to speed, but we don't need him to push us into the next phase of the NFL.
If he's going down, if he's indeed on the hot seat, if they miss the playoffs and they say, you need to turn this around, you got one more year, I wonder if Kyle would be willing to go down with Purdy. Or if he says, if I'm going down, I'm getting the quarterback I wanted since day one. And that's Kirk. Everyone knows. Everyone knows I wanted Kirk. I wanted Kirk in 2017. I wanted him in 2018. They keep deferring it. I keep going along with their guy. But if they're really going to put me on the hot seat like that, I'm getting my guy. Yeah, he's 37 years old. I don't care. I mean, he could say like, look, Brock's younger, but he's got shoulder issues or whatever, throwing arm issues. At least Kirk Cousins has like the real deal of an arm. I want this. And it may not work, but I could see Kyle Shanahan. That would be his final move.
Grant, if Kyle did that, then he's cooked for real.
Mm-hmm.
If he's cooked for real. Like honestly, look at it this way. If Kyle did that, then that lets me know that his ingenuity is completely gone. You know, you're not even trying to grow. You're not even thinking about moving on. If you think that a 37-year-old Kirk Cousins is going to run back the hands of time and give you hypothetically what you thought you were going to get, you haven't even seen this in real like cases. Then
because that's kind of like what Robert Saleh tried to do with Aaron Rodgers. Like, hey, old ass Aaron Rodgers, come save my bacon. Like, no, that's not going to work.
That shit ain't going to work. Exactly. Honestly, if Kirk Cousins gets floated, if I was the Yorks and Kyle even floated that, I'd be ready to move him.
Yeah, like, all right, that's not what I wanted. That's exactly what we were afraid to hear. Thank you very much. Good luck doing that somewhere else.
I was smiling nod. I'd say, all right, Kyle, you know, go ahead and try to get some meetings together. But on the back end, we're moving his ass. No, he's gone.
Yeah. Call up Ben Johnson right now. What is it going to take? $15 million a year?
Go.